Here we go with the next video in the T3.2 E-Truggy build that I'm doing. This build is going to cover bag 4, which is the side rails on the chassis and the steering rack. Really quick story, side note here before we get started. I was telling my wife that if I would have known that me doing YouTube would have the effects, my children now are actually starting to talk to me about this stuff, and it's like the longest conversations I've had with them, and it seems like forever. They become a teenager and they just don't want to talk to their parents anymore, but I guess this whole dad doing a YouTube channel is restoring some of my street cred, I guess. So I just thought it was funny. Wanted to share that with you guys. So if you're looking for a way to have your kids talk to you more when they're teenagers, try a YouTube channel. So switching to the table view here, you can see bag 4. I have it all laid out. Not a whole lot of parts. We got the chassis side rails on the tree here, and we got the steering rack, servo saver, and bell crank here. We got this optional aluminum for the servo saver that I'm going to put on here, and then the hardware is over here. And I'm going to try something. I saw this on a YouTube channel, and I was just wondering if it would work. So this guy on the YouTube channel, he snapped his finger and annoying things just went away. And I'm hoping if I snap my fingers here that maybe these annoying trees will go away. So let's try it. And hey, what do you know about that? It actually worked. I can't believe my eyes. If I would have known this, I would have started doing this a long time ago. Anyway, enough messing around. Let's get on with the build. So the first step here in bag 4, we bring the chassis in here, and we're going to be installing the side guards on the chassis. So these side guards are going to go like that. The other one on the other side. And it looks like there's 2 different size screws that we're using. We're using these smaller 5mm screws all in the back. So the back 4, and we're using the 8mm, so these up here in these front corners. And so I'm going to put those on, and then we'll come back. So one quick note before I put this together. These screws, actually, it's really nice. They screw in from the top. It used to be these would always screw in from the bottom, and these, the hexes in them would get filled with dirt. And so I really appreciate, especially these smaller screws that they install from the top. But that is what it means, is they are actually threading into aluminum instead of the plastic. And I just want to make sure you guys know that anytime you're going metal into metal, or almost, let's say 99% of the time you're going metal into metal, you're going to want to use a little thread lock. And so I just wanted to show you guys how much thread lock I apply. I just stick it here on my wrench. Actually, that's way more than I want. So if you get too much, I'll just roll it on my finger there and then wipe off the excess. So yeah, roughly about that much thread lock. And every one of these screws that's putting in the side guard, you're going to put thread lock on. All right, so you can see now we got the side rails on. A couple notes for you. When you put these screws in, it should not be hard. You're going into metal, it's already pre-tapped. It should be free. So If it's hard, do not force these screws in because you will strip out the chassis doing that. Back them out and get them to sit, and then they should go in relatively easily. The other thing that can happen is if you, for example, like tighten one down, the other ones might not be aligned properly, so you might have to put all these screws in and then tighten them at the end. I like to put this one in and then that one and then do the middle and then finally this one. But you might have to play with this to get these to all go in easily. Just make sure that you don't force these screws in and strip out the chassis, because that's a really expensive mistake. And then when you're tightening these, you don't have to go overly tight. The thread lock is going to hold them all in place. So just do it snug. That don't have to be gorilla tight. All right, so then let's move on. The next step here is to put the steering posts in. And you can see on the steering post, there's some flat spots here. And those flat spots, they sit in this recess in the chassis, and the chassis holds it for you when you put these screws in. So we get this screw here, put it on there, and we're again gonna do thread lock. It doesn't take a ton of thread lock. You don't want to put too much because then it's hard to get the screws out. So you can see, just kind of put enough in there to paint the threads blue. Like, it doesn't have to be bubbling out. Oh, let's bring that up here so you guys can actually see. So I'm gonna start this a little bit and then I'm gonna push it into the recess. There we go. All right, there's that one. Let's bring this one in here. Get some thread lock. And remember, if you get too much thread lock, just wipe it off with your finger. Put that screw like so. Push that into the recess. All right, so now we got the posts on. So the next step here is to build the servo saver. And again, this is the standard plastic part, but we're going to use this aluminum part here. And it looks like it goes that way. Yeah, there we go. This way here. And the manual says to put a little grease in here on this servo saver. I don't normally do that, but we're gonna give it a shot since the manual talks about it. We're just gonna stick it right in here with the X-Acto. Paint a little grease there, not a ton. Just get a little more maybe. There we go. So yeah, just a little paint there. We'll wipe that off. I don't want it to go crazy here. It just collects dirt if you get too much. So again, we are putting it this way. So this little thing points up and it's on the bottom, and then this little notch points to the arm here. This thing flares out, you can see it points to that arm. So then you bring this piece and you stick it through here, and then you put, this is a critical piece, these shims, if you don't stick these in there, if you forget to stick them in there, this thing is super hard to turn. So do not forget these shims. Yeah, I was just curious if they're the same as the diff, because my diff shims, yeah, they look the same. One of my diff shims is bent. I'm going to stick it in here instead, since this doesn't really matter too much. Yeah, this one right here is bent. Actually, so is this one. Stick that one in there. Then we're going to stick this spring in here. And actually, before we do that, you got to put this O-ring. So this O-ring makes it to where this metal on metal contact, you don't need any thread lock, because this O-ring keeps it tight. One thing I'll tell you is this can be a little challenging, because you have to compress this spring to put this on. And if it gets super hard to do, we'll see if I can do it here. But if it's super hard to do, you can pinch the spring. Oh, there we go, we got it. But if it's hard, you can pinch the spring with some pliers just to compress it a little bit before you actually install it. And you just stick it in like some Robo Grip pliers, a spring in here, and crunch it down a little bit, and that helps. Yeah, this thing gets tough no matter what. Use a rag. I wish AE, I've seen other manufacturers, they make this an actual 17 millimeter hex like your wheel nuts. I really wish AE would do that. All right, we got that cranked down. AE says this notch here should be 1.5 millimeters. Let's see what it is with the calipers here. It's like I'm a little over 2, which is fine. I like to run my servo savers a little tight. I feel like you get a little better response. Just be careful that you don't run them too tight, because you can damage your servo. If you have a really strong servo, maybe that's not an issue, but I would just be careful with that. So stick those there. The next step here is we put these bearings in. And remember, the blue seals go out. So you got a metal shield and a blue seal. Blue seals always go out to where they're exposed to the dirt, so you get that protection. And then we got these littler ones, same thing. One side's a seal, one side's metal. So put the blue seals out. We stick these two in here, like so. So now we got the racks, or the bell cranks, I should say, all completed. So the next thing here is we're going to put this rack on. All right, so I have the bell cranks oriented, and you can see these little ears that stick out. They point that way and that way, so out. And then this Ackerman plate, it goes on the bottom, and this points towards the where they mount here on the chassis. And also make sure that the countersinks are down, because the screws are going to come up through the bottom. And so I'm going to put this thing together and hopefully not mess it up. And again, we're gonna do metal to metal, so we're gonna put a little thread lock on here. I'm gonna put that through like that. And then this thing goes in here. And we are gonna screw it in like so. And these little metal inserts actually have a hex head built into them, so you can use your 2.5 and 2 to screw this whole assembly together. And the trick here is once you get this, you fully tighten this down. Oh, you know what? That is not a 2.5. That is why I'm not able to tighten it. That one actually uses a 3mm hex. There we go. So we tighten this thing down. Then you want to check this rack to make sure it's not binding, which it's not, and it shouldn't. Is what I'll tell you though, on some of the 10th scale cars, you will see binding here, and if that happens, you just want to loosen this screw up until it doesn't bind, and then let the thread lock dry, and it'll hold that screw in even though you haven't fully torqued it down. But you want this rack to be free. All right, so let's put this insert in. Grab this last screw here. Put some thread lock on it. Whoa, that's way too much. Wipe off the excess. Put that on the right side. And again, when you're threading into the metal, it should be easy. If it's binding, you have it crooked. You definitely don't want to strip out the threads, so it should be easy. And then we crank that down. This one is also free, so we're good. So finally here, you can put this steering in the rack, and it goes just like that. You might have to massage these bearings down. It goes just like that. There's your rack. And that concludes bag 4. So I hope that you guys find this useful and continue to follow me through this build. And if you don't want to miss the action, click on the RCX circle here at the end of my video to subscribe. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time.